Welcome to the Asureology Show, a growth hacker's guide to human capital management with your host, Mike Vannoy. Each week, we bring you experts in human resources, employment law, accounting, benefits planning, and more to build productive organizations. You'll gain practical guidance for your business. You'll be alerted to the latest news and mega trends that impact small and mid-sized companies. We'll give you the hands-on information you need to stay compliant with ever-changing employment laws, the strategies you need to win the war for talent, and much more, so you can focus on what you do best, growing your business. Enjoy the show.
The truth about on-demand pay, what employers need to know. Hi, I'm Mike Vannoy, Vice President of Marketing at Asure, and this is a really timely subject. So you hear us every week talk on the show about the war for talent has hit Main Street, and so small businesses have to compete not only with each other, but big companies. Big companies have different types of resources, but how do you compete for talent? Coincidentally, there's been this, I'd say, mega trend, mega shift happening around how people get paid. My daughter comes home from a babysitting job. She's paid Venmo on the car ride home. This is how the workforce is starting to get used to getting paid. And I think you got these two kind of worlds colliding, and it manifests in this new capability in the payroll world called earned wage access on-demand pay. Got a great guest to unpack this topic today. Tate Hackert, he's the co-founder and president of ZayZoon. Tate attended University of Victoria to study economics and finished his final semester at City University in Hong Kong. Tate's the brainchild behind ZayZoon, developing the idea of providing access to funds before payday back in 2013. ZayZoon is a socially responsible financial technology company that was created to end predatory lending and give employees control over their paycheck. Tate, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me.
So let's maybe just start with just a definition. I think this is a term that people are starting to get used to more and more. But how would you define on-demand pay, earned wage access? There's a whole bunch of acronyms for this.
So I would describe on-demand pay exactly how you described your daughter getting paid after a babysitting shift. I think that was so well said. It's the concept of getting paid when you need it and when you want it, right? It's archaic to have to wait 2 weeks for a paycheck. Of course, it makes sense. There's a lot of administration that needs to occur. There's a lot of moving parts and everything else. But as an employee, on-demand pay is this concept of getting paid when you want and when you need. And typically that's, as much as every day, or it could be just when that employee is in a cash flow crunch and needs to access pay in between paychecks.
Yeah. I'm curious for you to share your thoughts. Part of your mission is to end the predatory pricing strategies of these like same day loan, payday loans. I think we all know, even us old fogies, we know it's like you drive, you see along the side of the road, same day title loan, kind of payday loan sign flashing. And these things can be pretty nasty, right? It's dare I say, preying on those of us who need the help the most and can least afford those kinds of fees. Can you maybe explain the evolution from that business model, how it's kind of technologically advanced to where you are today, and why you aren't that, if that's a good way of saying it?
Payday loans are interesting. There are more payday lenders in the U.S. than there are McDonald's.
Wow.
And by a large margin, which is just such an insane thought, right? It's interesting. So when we first think about or the concept of on-demand pay and why is on-demand pay being able to be offered to employees, provide that same sort of utility as a payday loan, this concept of accessing your pay prior to the next payday, but in a really responsible way. And there's sort of a couple key factors that make that possible. Payday loans are expensive because they kind of have to be. And people believe that payday loans are making money hand over fist, and it's not exactly true. Now, of course, they're charging a crazy amount. They're charging crazy fees. They're absolutely predatory. It's terrible, terrible experience for the consumer. But the business itself is actually, they have tight margins just like any other business. And the reason being is a couple of reasons. So we kind of have three things. There's this old school administration practice where a lot of it's still done by paper and pen or legacy software. It's brick and mortar typically. So like, you've pointed out, there's payday lenders on what seems like almost every single street corner, right?
Yeah.
More payday lenders than McDonald's. And then the last thing is you have all of these really good customers that are subsidizing for the bad customers. And what that means is effectively every dollar that a payday lender gives out, around 20 cents of that dollar doesn't come back to them. And that results in a big hit to their revenue. And that's why they charge such exorbitant fees. And so earned wage access, on-demand pay, what really makes it different is this integration with payroll providers, that ease of capturing that employee data, being able to seamlessly offer up an amount to an employee based on the hours that they've worked but haven't yet been paid for, and then the seamless repayment of those funds. So now actually getting repaid through those funds, that employee doesn't have to forget or think about walking to the corner of that payday loan store and repaying back a check or anything like that. Those funds are paid back automatically, safely, securely. And that basically means that the business is a really streamlined, nice, efficient business, and all those savings can be passed on to the consumer. And that's why you see on payday or with on-demand pay, typically fees range from anywhere from $0 to around $5 for an employee to access their funds. Whereas with a payday loan, those same fees are, upwards of $30, $40, $50.
That makes sense. So if I'm a brick and mortar, old school payday loan company, all I really have is I can run credit on you. You give me your Social Security, some form of ID, and your last three paychecks. But I don't have any way to verify that you actually are getting a next paycheck, right? I mean, you may be coming to me because you just got fired and you're not telling me. So everyone in the system has to absorb that loss. Am I thinking about that right?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Yeah, and add to that again, like the brick and mortar nature, the marketing that goes into payday lenders, right? You see the commercials with the big yellow flashing lights and everything else.
Right.
On-demand pay, again, is this beautiful, succinct solution that gets offered through a payroll company and through the employer as an employee benefit. And all that marketing and lift and credibility is built through those clients, which really, again, like from a consumer point of view, they get to reap all the rewards and benefits by having a lot cheaper way to access capital in between paydays.
Yeah, like and just know through our integration. I mean, you just know, oh, John Doe, maybe instead of walking into the store, they're doing it right here, but in real time that Mike is actually an employee of Asure, and therefore, and this is how he's earned money in the past. So you have your underwriting is you have a lot better data to underwrite and be much more cost effective, right?
Exactly, and it's again, like really important to point out that earned wage access isn't alone, right? And you're saying it's using that pay data in real time to decide how much an employee can access early. Maybe taking a little step back just to provide everyone with further context in case they're kind of like, wading through it here, trying to put together the pieces. You brought up Asure. So a typical kind of process for an employee, what that looks like is normally they'll be notified through an email, maybe a lunchroom poster in their workplace. They'll go to sign up for an on-demand pay solution. And because that integration is already built in, because everything is sort of working in the back end, that employee enters in a couple key pieces of information and they're up, they're running, they're able to access funds in real time. Those funds are sent automatically to their bank account. And then again, on payday, they have nothing to worry about. It automatically gets deducted off of their paycheck. Yeah. And there's nothing for that employer to worry about either, because of kind of just what's running in the background with that payroll company. So it's really a nice solution that's hands off for the client, and makes a ton of sense for the employee.
So let's spend just maybe a couple minutes talking about benefits to the employee. I mean, this show is really for employers, around compliance and benefits and productivity. It's where I want to spend most of our time today. But just speaking to the benefits for employees in maybe some of the challenges in today's financial climate that so many employees are facing.
It's interesting. I would like to think that a benefit to the employee should be a brain dead benefit to the employer, right? Like if you are benefiting the employee, as an employer, you should really care about that. And with on-demand pay, sort of what we see is an employee that uses on-demand pay is typically one that's less financially stressed. They are one that is, due to being less financially stressed, they're more productive at work. They typically have a better morale, and they're more likely to stay because they're not eyes wide open looking across the street for 25 cents an hour more, because they're not stretched between paychecks. And so the same benefits that give employees access to this cheap liquidity in between pay periods is the exact same benefit that gives employers all these, increased retention, increased productivity, better recruitment. All of these are really byproducts of earned wage access.
So let's talk about the competitive advantages. I think so. The example I use all the time is, I walk into a restaurant, I see a bunch of open tables, thinking, oh, my wife and I, we're going to get seated right away, right? And they say, oh, it's going to be a 30-minute wait. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, we don't have enough staff to cover the entire restaurant. I mean, I think everybody knows what that feeling is like. That didn't exist pre-COVID. I think it's here to stay. This is not a COVID thing. This is a combination of birth rates 50 years ago, 40 years ago, in job participation rates. There's a whole bigger story at play here, but the war for talent is real. Now, if I'm a restaurant on one side of Main Street and says now hiring, and the restaurant on the other side of the street, Main Street, has now hiring, get paid at the end of your shift, which restaurant is more attractive to an employee, right? To me, that just brings it home. Maybe say more about what are the other competitive advantages for an employer of why you'd want to offer this.
I've been talking about this story a lot, but I really love it, and I love it because it's something that is so obvious in hindsight, but in the moment, I really would have never guessed or seen it. Our company ZayZoon's partnered with a large swath of Wendy's franchises, and one franchisor in particular sent an email to me one day and said, "Hey, I was going over my cash till theft numbers, right? All the skimming that occurs from my cash float, and since implementing ZayZoon, our cash till theft has gone down by 80%.
Wow.
And they attributed that exclusively to the access of on-demand pay. And when you sort of think about it, it starts to make sense. If your employees are stressed between pay periods, if they are scrambling to buy groceries that night and trying to figure out how to budget for the next 8, 9, 10 days, it starts to get tempting to take $20 out of the cash register.
Yeah.
But if you can access those wages in real time, all of a sudden it helps relieve that stress for that period of time, right? And now there might be a bigger problem at play here with just wages in general and how much people are getting paid and other benefits that are being offered. But I think as a short-term solution and something that can really provide immediate relief to an employee, earned wage access is such a beautiful solution because it takes away that stress immediately from an employee and does things like reduce till theft by 80% for an employer, which again, after hearing in hindsight makes sense, but just ridiculous.
That warms I'm not exaggerating, that warms my heart. What a reflection of humanity, because it's so easy. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. I own some businesses. I've been part of owning businesses for my whole career. And it's real easy to jump to some conclusions about criminality and mindset, good person, bad person. But when the same human doesn't take from the till because they can access their legitimate paycheck early, it really screams to need, right? In not having to wait the 2 weeks plus another week for payday and all that kind of stuff. It's like the people who need it, and it's not to go spend it on nefarious things. It's for groceries and in daycare and gas to get to work and in life's essentials, right?
Yeah, we see. I think the most recent stat that we've pulled and surveyed from customers is 86% of ZayZoon transactions are used for short-term necessities. So these are groceries, utility bills, medication, things
Yeah.
that can't be waited on. And again, super powerful, right? I have another story as a benefit to the employer. Um, Last year, I embarked on a 75-day RV tour across the United States. We hit 21 different states across 75 days. We brought 41 ZayZoon team members along for different parts of the journey. And the intent of it was, we're growing as a company. We added a bunch of people to the business. And we wanted to instill this concept of just ownership in our team, and this concept of talking to your customer and learning from your customers. And so, we are embarked on this journey, and we were in Dayton, Ohio with one of our clients, a large manufacturing client, and they implemented ZayZoon. I didn't know about this until actually chatting with the leader of HR there. They implemented ZayZoon because they were doing advances in-house to the tune of about $10,000 annually that they were spending just on transaction costs. And so when you think about like the power of, that administrator, employees coming into our office, asking for advances, a paper check having to be cut off the side of the desk, maybe an off-cycle pay run or a wire fee being made. This is an employer that wants to help their employees, right? They want to, who wants to have an employee come into your office and say, hey, I need money? And your response is, I can't help you, sorry. Of course you're going to if you're a good employer, but it does pose issues, right? It costs money. It creates somewhat of a liability. Are you going to give Paul the same advance that you're going to give John or Jane, right? And so when I heard that again, I recognized that businesses were doing advances for employees. I didn't realize to what extent, and I didn't realize to what extent it was costing them. And so another good wide opening experience for me.
You know what? And I kind of love. I had before we started this conversation. I had in my head. We're going to talk some employee benefits, some employer benefits, and I love how you corrected me out of the gate that they're commingled. They're the same thing, right? Because if you're fighting the war for talent to attract people, and then when you get good people, you want to keep them. Even if you're doing this purely out of the goodness of your heart, you want to find ways. If you're a capitalist pig and you don't care anything about them, you simply need good people. They're still completely intertwined, right? And it just, that story got me thinking. It's kind of none of the employer's business that they need some help right now, right? And how embarrassing is it if I'm an employee that, I'm a single parent, I've got a domestic whatever issue, and I'm trying to find a way to feed my kids, get them to school that day, that week, whatever. It's like, do I really want my boss to know that about me when I'm just grinding and working as hard as I can to get ahead and show my best foot forward, right? Clearly that's very personal sometimes and it's employee centric. But if I'm an employee that's working for an employer that provides that benefit to me, that's just goodness.
It's interesting because if you think about the multitude of benefits that are available, sure, there's reports that are provided, and sure, as an employer, you can dig into things and query the system. But it's not very typical that you know exactly what employees are using, what benefits you have, or how often they're going to see a therapist versus,
Sure.
whatever other type of doctor. And so with earned wage access, again, like, why not give them a little bit of anonymity, offer
Right.
this to the entirety of the staff, and just know that, they're going to use it as they see fit. If they're using it, they probably need it. And take surveys, communicate with your staff, figure out how they're liking it, figure out if there are ways that can be improved upon it, and have that open communication. I think we see a lot of employers where their initial reaction, if it's not, wow, this is awesome, then it is typically, oh, I don't want my employees to take advantage of this, or, oh, like, what happens if they use it too much, and they sort of fall into this cycle or trap. And for me, I think that's indicative of a much broader problem and an opportunity as an employer where you can coach your staff, you can put other benefits into play, you can have this open door communication policy that I think creates a much better relationship. And so, again, like, I'm obviously biased, but to me, it's such a win-win.
So, Tate, I am curious. Being in this world, you're I'm sure familiar with a trend around financial wellness, right? So you go back, not that many decades, and quote unquote employer benefits basically meant, healthcare, health, dental, vision, right? And in the last couple of decades, it's morphed into a whole bunch of stuff, from employee assistance programs to pet insurance, to you name it, right? The plans are getting more and more creative. I think just to serve needs of employees as our world continues to evolve, and employers are in a tougher fight to attract and retain the talent. Where do you see financial wellness fitting in the trends for offering as a benefit? How do you see on-demand pay, earned wage access as even being positioned? Do you position it as a component of the benefit plan? Maybe speak into that if you could.
Yeah, it depends. We definitely view earned wage access as a crucial part of an employer's benefit offering. Again, like we talked about, all the benefits to both the employer and employee. I think it's hard to ignore earned wage access as a core benefit. I think when you're an employer looking at what to offer, again, like, have that open communication with your staff, figure out what problem areas they're running into, figure out, you mentioned pet insurance. Do your staff have pets? Like, if they don't have pets, then why would you offer pet insurance? Like, that seems
Right.
very common sense, right? And so I think similarly with earned wage access, you can kind of view it in two buckets. You can view it as, are my employees having cash flow shortfall issues? And ways that I can measure that could be by an anonymous survey. I could go chat with my HR administrator and figure out, hey, how many of our employees are actually asking for advances? I think there's ways that you can sort of look at it through that lens. The other lens that you can look at it at is earned wage access is this no lift, no cost solution for an employer. And so what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You make it available and no employees use it. And the upside is that you make it available and just one employee finds an immense amount of value in it, right? Of course, typically you see a lot more. And I think employers would be surprised with how many of their staff actually do run into cash flow issues in between pay periods and find value in a service like this. But again, in evaluating benefits and how we think of it fitting into the broader benefits landscape, it's like anything. Just talk with your staff, figure out what's needed, do a comprehensive sort of view at the benefits market, and decide on what's best for you and your business.
So that's so important. I think we need to say it twice. Let's explore that a bit more. Yes, the benefits to employees and employers are intertwined here, and there's a bunch of goodness and reasons to provide this type of a capability to your employees. But I think as an employer, you still have a bottom line to manage. There's only so much margin to give. If you're in a business that you've chosen, okay, we're going to pay super high, we're going to pay top of market commission rates, so our employees can maximize earnings. That therefore leaves less dollars for me in the back end to provide other kind of benefits. You said this doesn't cost anything. Say more. Why doesn't it cost anything to the employer? And then how easy is this for an employer to deploy?
Earned wage access, generally speaking, as an industry, typically doesn't cost the employer anything. Now I can speak for ZayZoon in particular. We never cost the employer a dime. And for our service, we can onboard an employer in literally minutes with zero ongoing administration required on their behalf. I think the latter part of that statement, ongoing administration, varies provider to provider. And certain things are required by different providers in order to offer the service. But generally speaking, it's a pretty low lift, no cost solution for an employer, and a benefit that's really utilized and paid for by the employee. Does that help answer your question, Mike?
Okay, so I lost the signal for just a second there. Sorry. All right, so no cost. Here's I think I wanted to be crystal clear. The purpose of the show is to provide information to employers to help them grow their businesses, right? Stay compliant, attract and develop talent. There's a bunch of earned wage access vendors out there. All I'll say is that we went through a very extensive evaluation with I'd say all of them. And we chose ZayZoon for a reason, platform, technology, people, process, etc. So whether you do business with ZayZoon, Asure or not, I think that's an important thing for employers to consider is why wouldn't you add a benefit to your employees and don't assume, oh, my folks don't need that, because there's probably at least someone who does when it's extremely low effort and no cost on the employer side. I mean, very rarely as an employer, as an entrepreneur, are you going to come across opportunities to add value for your employees that cost you nothing. I mean, this feels about as no-brainer as it gets. Am I overstating that, Tate?
You're definitely not overstating it. The biggest objection that we get from prospective clients is, in one way or another, this is too good to be true. We talk about how simple of an integration it is, or no integration at all, simply an activation, because all the heavy lifting has been done with the payroll provider in the back end. And typically when an employer is thinking about anything connected to payroll, they're thinking of that initial ERP solution that they put in, or this need to kind of do bank reconciliation and match their bank account up and onboard with the payroll, like all these things that
right
isn't included here, right? And so it truly is like a no-brainer, super simple, super easy to implement. And I can talk about that for forever, because obviously I'm such a proponent of it. But again, like whether you're an employer of 2 or 3 employees, or you're an employer of a couple, few, 5, 10,000 employees, it truly makes sense.
Yeah. So we're going to compete with a train by you. That's good. I love this. This we're working in real time here. So let's demystify that if you can. I'm not asking you to give trade secrets or give away your P&L, but for the person watching, the entrepreneur watching today, saying that's too good to be true. How is this free to me? I mean, at the end of the day, I can tell you from the payroll provider side, we want to provide the most competitive payroll product that we can to help employers attract and retain talent. And so it doesn't cost us anything either. the model is really built for you to make money, but because you're technology centric, not bricks and mortar payday loans, you can do it through scale and low cost efficiency of technology. Am I saying that right, or is there anything you'd add?
I think you will hear a little bit of a train here.
That's all good.
I'm working remotely today out of Florida. Beautiful, beautiful weather. So, yeah, I think you said that really well. When ZayZoon approaches the market, we partner with payroll providers like Asure, and we make sure that that is our first and foremost focus. And we know that if we can have a really, really amazing partnership, and that includes the technology integration in the back end, it also includes the people side of things, right? We know if we can have that really beautiful partnership, then for an employer, the account manager, their support rep, their salesperson is able to have a credible conversation about ZayZoon, and the activation that occurs is really straightforward, really easy, really simple because of all the heavy lifting that Asure and ZayZoon have done in the background months and months prior. And so, again, like super simple, super easy. There's no reason why an employer shouldn't turn a solution like this on.
So let's talk about productivity. So, you talked about, real world impact on theft from the till. We talked about, the privacy aspect for employees and not putting employers in uncomfortable positions. But I think they're just real world benefits to having more productive employees because of stress, and they're not spending working hours dealing with, they're on the phone with, say, a creditor or a utility company, lining up this or that. What information can you share there about actual hard dollar impact to productivity?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have stats or stats that I'd be comfortable with being quoted on these. I'm sure I'll get the percentages off by 1 or 2 points, but in general, there's a lot of time spent by employees doing exactly what you said, spending time on the phone with the utility company, spending time going to the bank during working hours, spending time worrying about money during working hours. So a lot of time that is wasted at work, a lot of this absenteeism or presenteeism is actually spent worrying about finances. It's a financially stressed country. Over 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. They have less than $400 of savings in their bank account. And so, there's no wonder that productivity starts to suffer because of it. What we see specifically at ZayZoon is a decrease or an increase in productivity due to offering a solution to combat, exactly that financial stress. But I think as an employer, it's pretty important to dig in deeper and figure out exactly what other stressors employees are having. We're a small business too, right? We're a team of just shy of 100 people. We run quarterly ENPS surveys. If your listeners don't know what that is, it's basically just like how much are your employees enjoying the time at the organization? How much would they actually recommend the organization to a friend or colleague? And what comes out of that is, again, this stream of open communication, right? So we use these surveys as a way to understand how much the organization is stressed at work, how much the organization is feeling like their workload's too much. Why is the workload feeling too much? Is it because there's actually too much work to do? Or is it because the work is spread out in 20 different buckets and they're continually context switching? Is it because they're financially stressed? And so all of that stuff then feeds into what we were talking about earlier, Mike, which is let's look at your benefits package. Let's look at things like earned wage access. Let's look at our organization holistically and start piecing together the parts of what can really benefit our employees and make them more productive at work. Because ultimately, if you can make an employee happy, if you can make them less financially stressed, in my mind, that's a perfect combination for increased productivity.
Okay, so I think we probably don't need to. I think we've said it, right? I mean, it costs the employer nothing. There's a million benefits to the employee. Happier employees make better, more productive employees. I mean, this feels like no-brainer. So certainly we hope everyone chooses Asure and accesses ZayZoon through Asure. But regardless, if you're on another platform and you say, you know what, I gotta do this. This is stupid not to. Let's shift to successful or not successful implementations. So I'm an employer. I run a small business. I've determined that, call it a third of my, maybe it's half of my workforce will likely benefit from this. What are the best practices to roll something like this out in my organization?
We actually developed what we call earned wage access buyer's guide to tackle this exact question. Because earned wage access is for everyone, but there's different providers depending on your type of org, what you're trying to accomplish, what your employees want, etc. So I think from an implementation perspective, what you should be looking for is understand, you can do a survey beforehand, figuring out how many of your employees are actually going to uptake a service like this. Are your employees unbanked? Are they underbanked? Do they want a card solution? Is a card really important? If it's not,
explain that and why that would matter.
Yeah, certainly. So earned wage access providers send money to employees in a number of ways. Some are more flexible, some are less flexible. For example, some earned wage access providers require a card. They require a payroll card that has the employee's direct deposit put onto that card. There's full banking functionality provided with that card. It's a really sleek, simple solution for an employee that otherwise wouldn't have a bank account. Whereas other earned wage access providers might provide flexibility, like ourselves, where that employee can choose to access funds to a card. They can choose to access funds to their own bank account, or they can choose to access funds in a multitude of other ways. And so if you're a company that has a large part of your workforce that is unbanked and is using a pay card solution, and your employees are actually using that pay card solution, because we've seen it where they think that they're using it, but actually none of them are. If they're actually using that pay card solution, then it might be best that you look at an earned wage access provider that specializes in pay cards. If your employees don't care about having a pay card, if they already are banking with Chase or Wells or a Chime, then probably going with someone more flexible with more functionality makes a little bit more sense. So that's just one way that you can sort of look at the market and decide what's required. Depending on your size of business, small, medium, larger businesses, each of those are going to have a little bit different requirements. I'll speak to ZayZoon. Again, we specialize in small and mid-sized businesses, typically a few thousand employees and under, going all the way down to a couple employees, right? Now, there are businesses that specialize in 10, 15,000 employees and above. And just given the nuances in those larger shops, it might make sense to go with a company an earned wage access company that specializes in those large enterprise deals, because they might have ways of approaching it a little bit differently than someone that just focuses on the small and mid-size. So I think there's a lot of things that you can kind of point at and look at. Again, we have an earned wage access buyer's guide to help with exactly that. But yeah, I think do your own research, have a lot of conversations. It should be, simple to have these conversations, grab demos, and, do business with people you like.
All right. So Tate, people listening today, they're like, okay, no brainer. It doesn't cost anything. There's obvious benefits to employees and therefore obvious benefits to me as the employer. Entrepreneurs are working their faces off, right? I mean, they're working 60, 80 hours a week. Probably not even sitting at a computer watching this, maybe listening to the podcast while on the treadmill after the kids went to bed, or maybe on the car ride home from dropping the kids at school. I mean, this is the life of an entrepreneur. So what do you say to the folks who think this is a great idea. You had me at hello, but are scared to death about how much time commitment this is going to be to actually implement. What's all involved there?
Literally nothing.
You're gonna have to go to more detail because no one's going to believe that. But it is true. But explain what you mean.
Yeah. Again, like that integration that we've created with Asure in the background means that this is automatically available to all Asure clients without them lifting a finger, right? They have the option of opting out of this service. They have the option of saying, hey, I don't want it. Otherwise, it's really just an added payroll feature that Assure's chosen to offer,
Right.
and employees can use it as they see fit. Now, of course, speaking more generally and broadly, if you have individuals listening that maybe aren't Assure clients, or maybe looking to explore other earned wage access providers, it still is usually a very low lift, minutes or hours, not days or weeks. Especially speaking to our solution. I'll use the example behind me here. I'm sitting in front of a coffee shop at the moment. It's a coffee shop of probably 7 full-time employees. There's a couple behind the desk right now. This is the entrepreneur that you're talking about, working many, many hours. Probably one of them behind the desk is the owner at the moment. They don't have time to implement something. And so we knew that coming into this. We knew that we wanted to make a solution that was really, really turnkey for the employer to offer. And it was really just a mechanism to make available to the employees so that they could have access to those wages as they see fit. And so when a coffee shop like this just decides to sign up, in the case of Assure, it's just automatically available to them. In the case of other offerings that ZayZoon's partnered with, it might require that coffee shop to reach out to their support person or to their account manager, ask for the activation to be turned on. It takes a matter of minutes. It's turned on. An email automatically goes out to all employees. That email contains a one-click activation link where that employee logs in and sees exactly how many wages they have available. They can choose to access their wages or come back at a later time and do so. And then depending on the size of that employer, 7 employees is probably a little bit too small. But once you're in that 20, 30, 40, 50 range, we'll send out lunchroom posters, workplace posters, postcard materials, things with QR codes that employees can scan and sign up that way, so they're not just reliant on a email going to them. But again, like all of that stuff is taken care of by ZayZoon. And sure, there might be a little bit of intervention by the employer to actually hand that stuff out or hang up a lunchroom poster, but it truly is a zero lift, zero ongoing administration play by that employer. And they get to reap all the rewards of the benefits of, like you mentioned, Mike, increased productivity, reduced turnover, better recruitment efforts. One thing I didn't mention previously was across, basically all earned wage access providers, you see an increase of about 2x candidate pipeline just by offering earned wage access as a benefit in your job postings. Wow. And so again, these are all things that that employer gets to reap the rewards of for doing effectively no work.
Right. Well, Tate, I think that's a good place to wrap. I mean, this is one of those rare opportunities as an employer where you have something that costs you nothing. It's in demand. It's in demand in a way that maybe not even all your employees understand it exists yet. And so if there's any work, it's maybe going to be in the education side. But you just heard from Tate that, if you're a partner with us, that part would be taken care of as well. But this is just a cool opportunity to help small businesses compete for the war for talent, differentiate yourself as an employer, offering something different than same business on the other side of the street, across town, across country, whatever the case may be, to attract and retain talent. And even if it didn't do any of those things, there's people in need, right? The gap between the haves and have-nots just continues to widen. And we're all in the same ocean. We're not all in the same boat. And a lot of people have need for cash. And even if they didn't have a need, The next generation, they're used to getting paid at the end of their shift, and you're going to have to accommodate the needs of those employees to pay them the way they expect to, because increasingly they're going to have choices and they're going to go to the employers that meet those needs, whether it's financial needs or just simply the expectations that they come to the workforce with. Tate, is there anything else you'd want to say in closing here?
We're all in the same ocean, but not all in the same boat. That is something I'm going to steal. I like that saying a lot, Mike. No, I think you summed it up perfectly. It's an exciting time. It's a solution that's adopted by Walmart, by Kroger's, by McDonald's and Wendy's and Hilton Hotels. It's something that can be adopted by any small business, any large business. And so, again, do your homework, but it is that ultimate no-brainer in my mind. Thanks so much.
I think it is too, and I don't say that lightly. Anybody who watches this show every week knows that the show's not a sales pitch. This is to bring information to employers to help them grow their business and stay compliant. But this one's a no-brainer. You should be implementing an earned wage access on-demand pay solution. The benefits are too obvious. The cost is too low, and such little effort required. So that's it. Tate, really enjoyed talking to you. Good seeing you again. And until next time, and for everybody else, until next week's show.
At Asure, we build human capital management software and services that help 90,000 companies like yours attract, develop, and retain great people. Our low upfront costs and affordable subscription model allow you to save cash to invest in things that drive growth, not overhead. To learn more about how Asure can help you claim up to $26,000 per employee with the Employee Retention Tax Credit, automate your payroll, and build productive teams that are compliant with ever-changing HR laws, visit AsureSoftware.com.